vote after, between meetings, guys.
Okay.
The press of the Down Beach Current were notified of this meeting. A copy of same was posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building. Would you please turn off all electronic equipment? We will stand for the flag salute. Attention, salute. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Rosie, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Becker?
Here.
Ms. Tarbee? Here. Mr. Blumberg?
Here.
Okay, at this point, we're going to turn the meeting over to Jim Rotella. He has a presentation, which is the Strategic Recovery Planning Report. Doesn't work. Turn it bottom, Jim.
Yes, okay. Okay, good afternoon, Mayor and members of the Commission. My name is Jim Rotella. Back in December, the Commissioners received a grant from the state to review the impacts of Sandy on the community. This grant, Margate was one of a few communities that qualified for this grant. In order to qualify, you had to have at least $1 million in rateable loss immediately after the storm. And that was documented for the city, and for that purpose, you qualified for this funding. There was a total of $5 million available statewide. The good news is that the state is allocating another $10 million in planning money in their second trough of Sandy money. So there's going to be additional funds. And the reason that this funding was put together
I can talk without. The reason that this was allocated was the state realized that communities would not have funding to do proper planning after Sandy. And, it would be something that would be overlooked. And without these funds, there just wouldn't be an opportunity for communities to have Margate to do this type of work. So the state allocated funds for this initial study, and then as you'll see, they've allocated funds for a lot of additional work. A little easier, so the public can see as well. First off, this report does a number of things. It looks at how Margate can rebound from the storm, how you can increase resiliency in infrastructure and buildings, how to protect neighborhoods from future disaster, how to increase economic development. We talk about that actually. As a result of this effort, the city is already taking advantage of that through a special grant from New Jersey Economic Development. How to increase insurance liabilities in the future and put together an implementation plan. We had a number of meetings. The city put together a steering committee, which was elected officials and quarterly individuals, and that group met a couple times. We met with the planning board when we finished this prior to February, when we met again in April, and we met with the green team a couple times during the course of this process. There's a lot of input into this effort. Just very quickly, just a summary of the impacts of the storm on the city. $3.5 million in rateable loss as of March 1st, 2013. As I said, you needed $1 million in rateable loss in order to qualify for this funding.
As of April 1st of 2014, there were 92 substantially damaged homes that were documented in the city. Substantially damaged homes are homes that were at least 50% of their value was destroyed by the storm. Those properties are required by law to be elevated within the next 4 years. There were over 1,000 flood claims that were issued in the city, over $10 million in insurance claims that were paid, and an additional almost $5 million in SBA loans that were issued in the city. One thing you hear a lot about is flood insurance. As you know, that there was a special legislation that was passed last month to basically delay the implementation of flood insurance. And that was called the Homeowners Flood Insurance Affordability Act. It didn't change the impact of flood insurance. It really pushed it back for a couple years. But basically, properties on the barrier islands and properties that are in the A zone and B zone are going to see higher flood insurance over time. And initially, the limits were going to be up to 25% a year. Now with this legislation, it's limited to about 18% a year, so it'll be phased in over a longer period of time. But certainly, flood insurance will continue to be an issue going forward. One of the things we looked at is how can you address that? Certainly, elevating properties is a key way to address flood insurance. Flood insurance is based on the flood elevation of the property. Certainly, elevating the properties above the flood map levels will reduce insurance costs over time. Another thing that we'll go over and is recommended in the report is incorporating flood mitigation into your zoning and building codes. And the third thing which Margate has done a wonderful job with is increasing your CRS activities. Margate's a leader in New Jersey. As a Class 5, your residents receive a 25% discount on flood insurance. But as you'll see, there's still some other things that the city can do to potentially improve that situation. The flood maps, this is important because the flood insurance is really gauged by two different opportunities. One is the current flood maps, and then the second is when the new flood maps go into effect. As you recall, right after Sandy, their new maps were released by the state. They were put into effect. The end of this month, the city will probably receive a briefing by the state and the preliminary flood maps. These are the maps that will probably be the maps that will be adopted sometime next year. There'll be a 60-day period for public input and review. After that, there'll be another 90-day period for review, and then the state will start the implementation process. So the new maps could be effective as early as mid-2015, and obviously when they go into effect, also additional flood insurance premiums will go into effect as well. This is a quick summary of the grants and funding that the city has received to date. I mentioned that we just received word, I think 2 weeks ago, that Margate was one of 7 communities in New Jersey that was selected for a economic development grant through the New Jersey Economic Development Authority. We had applied for a $377,000 streetscape improvement for 4 blocks on Ventnor Avenue. Margate has been shortlisted for that grant, and we're now going through the environmental review process. Those funds will have to be spent by the end of next year. To complement Margate, one of the reasons you were selected was because you had already done the engineering for the streetscape improvements. One of the things that the state looked for is projects that were shovel-ready, because this money, the HUD money, has to be spent very quickly. Has to be spent by the end of next year. And so many communities applied, but they didn't have the engineering done, they weren't really ready to implement. So I think that's what gave Margate an added star when they were reviewing the applications. In addition, the city has received individual assistance from FEMA, about $3.1 million, public assistance as of April of this year of $3.2 million, hazard mitigation grants for a few properties, RREM, which are grants to elevate homes for 22 properties, and DCA resettlement grants, which have already been distributed for 93 properties, about $93,000. This just goes over in a little bit more detail the grant that I just talked about that the city has been awarded on a preliminary basis. There were $5 million available. Margate, as I mentioned, was one of 7 communities that were selected, and there's the 4 blocks that were identified in the grant application are outlined here: Douglas to Essex, Essex to Exeter, Decatur to Benson, and Adams to Jefferson. One of the things that's outlined in the report are potential open space opportunities. When you're looking at CRS points and storm mitigation, one of the priorities is the acquisition of open space. Actually, the top 2 priorities that the state has set for all funding is elevating homes and the purchase of open space. This property, which is in the northwest section of the city, was identified in your master plan, and is one potential property. The city already owns a good share of the property, but the additional properties could be purchased as part of a grant application. One thing to just make you aware of this, the Green Acres just released applications this week for open space funding for both acquisition and development. Communities that qualify are only communities that do not have an outstanding grant application. Many communities are still working through different applications. Margate, I think, is one of the communities that would qualify for that. So just to make you aware, that's an opportunity to do this project or to do a development project in the community. Other projects, Amherst Avenue Bulkhead. We've applied to DEP for funding to replace the bulkhead. That was one of the first things that we did after the storm. DEP has $25 million a year that's allocated to coastal projects. And the money can be used to for matching funds for beach projects. It can also be used for bulkhead projects. So this application has been submitted. DEP has not awarded any grants out of that $25 million yet. And we've continued to have dialogue with them. The reason they haven't awarded any grants is their first priority is to provide matching funds for the beach replenishment projects. So they're kind of waiting to see how much they're going to need, because basically the state is replenishing 81 miles of coastline this year. So once that's done, then they'll make decisions on bulkhead projects. So that's one effort. Another effort that we've worked on with Ventnor is the Ventnor Gardens Stormwater Pump Station. That application was made to the New Jersey Environmental Infrastructure Trust. It's being reviewed now from a permitting standpoint. The city's partners in that are Ventnor, Atlantic County Government, and the Utilities Authority, who actually did the design and is doing the permitting for that project. So that project's moving ahead. Construction, once the permitting is completed, assuming the permitting is completed around July, construction for that project could start before the end of the year. 2 other things that we have pursued. Creation of a living shoreline is something that we applied for many of the communities along Absecon Island. And it's just another funding source for improvements along the Bay Area. That application was made through the state with the state's support about 3 months ago, and we're waiting to hear on that. And then the 4th thing is there's going to be additional funding available for elevating homes. especially homes that are severe repetitive loss properties and repetitive loss properties. That funding will come directly from FEMA, and it's just something to keep in mind because that's something that's will be coming out in the next few months. Okay. Margate, as I said, Margate it was probably as prepared as any of the coastal communities, but there's always other things that you can do. We talked about stronger and more resilient infrastructure, looking at the bulkheads, determining the opportune height, replacing bulkheads, open space acquisition we talked about, non-grid power sources. The state has put aside $200 million for non-grid power sources, basically to look at ways where critical facilities like City Hall and sewer and water systems can operate during a storm and after the storm, using independent power sources, or by using solar and using that to power the building. Sustainable economic development, that's investing in things like your commercial districts. Elevating homes, obviously a key element. Stormwater improvements, much like the Ventnor Gardens project, and planning, zoning, and building code improvements. I mentioned that there are two phases to this program. The first was to do this strategic report, and the second is to do potentially gain funding for more specific reports. What we'd like you to consider today or at a future meeting is, one, to endorse this report, which is in general, and then secondly is to endorse an application for these 9 grants. And these grants were identified through the report, identified by the steering committee, the green team, and the planning board. And I'll go through them one at a time. And you'll see they are prioritized. The planning board was asked to prioritize these, and so they're in priority order right now. Just to give you some background, other communities have already been through this process. Other communities have already received funding for an assortment of projects like this. So we're close to the front, but there's other communities that are ahead of Margate. The first is environmental design of the Bayfront area. This would be to look at the entire Bay Area, determine the potential, the optimum height of the bulkheads. I know you've already made some adjustments, but based on engineering, what's the optimum height? Determine what areas where bulkheads need to be replaced, what areas do they not exist where they need to be built. Take a look at the building standards in the bulkhead areas, looking at the height of decks, the height of the buildings themselves, how they interact with the bulkheads. Really almost an entire planning district planning review along the bulkhead areas. The second report focuses more just on Amherst Avenue. Obviously, during a storm, there were a number of substantially damaged units or homes and properties along Amherst Avenue. This would be to just look at that area. Again, looking at the bulkhead improvements, looking at the potential of a boardwalk or some type of pedestrian improvement in that area, and also looking at the standards and how that would all interplay. The third study is a master plan redevelopment or master plan re-exam. The last time the city did a master plan re-exam was 2006. The law requires you to re-exam your master plan every 10 years, so it's coming up. And given the fact that there's funding available that would allow the city to do this now without spending local budget money, it's an opportunity for the community. When you do a master plan, there's always zoning improvements that are recommended. The next grant is to fund the zoning ordinance revisions that would be recommended by the master plan. The fifth study is to look at the beachfront area. When we started talking about the Bayfront area, there was interest in looking at the bulkheads on the beachfront area as well, examining them, doing an investigation, doing a capital plan for replacements and improvements, and also looking again at the standards for properties along the beachfront. The next study that was recommended is really an element of the master plan, an economic development element. That would be to look at the business commercial districts in the community, look at the marketability and the types of uses that should be encouraged and attracted given the demographics of our area, look at incentives that may be available to boost the commercial districts, and develop a stronger commercial base in the community. The seventh report was actually a recommendation of the Green Team Sustainable Community Plan. And again, that's to look at all the standards in the community and look at things like energy efficiency and other options to improve the sustainability in the community. The last two are capital related. When you go through this type of planning study, you're going to come out with a number of recommendations. They're not all things that can be implemented next year. You really need a long-term capital plan. And this would be to look at the economics of the city and develop a long-term capital plan to implement the recommendations that everyone agrees to through the planning process. And the last recommendation is a plan for regionalization and shared services. One of the things that the state realizes is that the economics of all the coastal communities changed after Sandy. Margate's a little bit different than most communities. Margate's the only community that I'm aware of where the rateable base is actually growing. In most of the other coastal communities, the rateable base is still shrinking. And a lot of that is Sandy related. And one of the things that the state realizes is there's going to be a lot of capital needs, and in order to achieve those capital needs, you're probably going to have to look at ways to operate more efficiently, and reduce operating cost. So the regionalization and shared services study will help you to guide you to do those things. So all total there's a total of $410,000 in planning and engineering work. A lot of this is engineering, a lot of looking at the Bayfront area, looking at the bulkheads, even design standards. A lot of that requires careful engineering. Capital plan is also relies a lot on engineering. So the purpose here is to put the city in the best position to move forward given the funding that's available through the state. A couple things that aren't funded by the state, but just opportunities that we brought out in the report. One is the state, and we had talked about this at our initial meeting, the state provides for energy savings improvement plans, which allows energy improvements that are identified for public buildings, both schools and municipal buildings, to be paid for by the savings over time, the energy savings over time. It's a way for municipal governments and school districts to upgrade lighting and to upgrade HVAC systems in their buildings without assuming new debt, without funding it directly. And you fund it with savings over time. This is being done by a number of the school districts, and it's just another way to address issues without creating new capital needs. And the last thing is a bike and pedestrian planning assistance. Margate is a very pedestrian-friendly community. The state provides funding, and actually they hire traffic engineers to come into your community and to really evaluate the entire community and ways to make it safer for pedestrians and bicyclists to get around the community. This was done in Ocean City. It's been done in a lot of communities in the area, but I'll use Ocean City as an example. Ocean City did this study 4 years ago. The state probably spent well over $100,000 on the study, and the study has gotten a grant every year since the study was done to improve their facilities, because basically they had a blueprint. They had a master plan that allowed them to move towards implementation. This is just a summary of the different funding sources. A lot of them are the ones that we have already talked about that are available. There's not, everyone thinks, well, there's one bucket of money for Sandy-related issues. That's really not the case. As issues are identified, new funding sources become available. For example, early on after Sandy, we realized that there was no funding for bulkhead improvements. None. We went and met with the governor's office. There was no funding for bulkhead improvements. We met with the Infrastructure Trust. They didn't have any funding for bulkhead improvements, even though our area had tremendous needs. U.S. Department of Interior and the Army Corps of Engineers started to develop funding sources just for bulkhead improvements. So this is still evolving. There's still a lot of change. They're really trying to address needs, but it's not. There's not just one funding source. Anyhow, that gives you an overview. Before we open up to questions, what we would ask you to do is consider a resolution that would, one, endorse the report in general terms, and secondly, make an application for the 9 grants that we just presented. Time is of the essence. These grants are not competitive. These grants are first come, first serve. So basically, assuming that this report has already been reviewed by DCA in draft form, assuming they approve the report and they have your endorsement of the report, they will move ahead and review this phase 2 grant applications once they have your resolution. So, it's something we want you to consider. At this point, I'll open up to questions.
Jim, I'd like to just add to that, to the commissioners. Jim and I and David and Roger met this morning, and I know that Jim had sent resolutions already to the clerk's office, and in our opinion, based on the planning board's review and the planning board's endorsement and Jim's recommendation, our opinion, there is no downside in approving this report and approving the application for the grants. What will happen next is we'll have to review whatever happens from the state, which we hope to be very positive, and then we'll consider how we're going to bundle those together and how we're going to award them and what kind of RFPs or who we're going to grant the contractors with. That all comes in the future, and you'll have plenty of time to discuss that. We'll involve our engineer in that discussion and all of the professionals. But I would hope that at the second meeting tonight, if you can get your questions answered and we listen to the public, that you can endorse this plan that's already been endorsed by the planning board, and let's get our applications in as early as we can. We've been very successful so far with the work that we've done through Jim Rotala's organization. We have $400,000 coming for streetscape that we just didn't have before, and we're, as he said, one of only 7 out of 70 communities that got that grant. I think we have a real good chance of getting this money, and it's going to save us money in the future. We would have to have done the master plan anyhow, so there's no downside in this that I can see.
Thank you, Rich. Any questions? Brendan? Laurie?
No, I just want to thank Jim for the hard work. The report looks excellent, and I fully support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Good job. Okay. I think we should just go right to department reports. Mr. Wahlberg, do you want to start? Are you?
Okay, I'll just report on active projects. When I say active, under construction. Benson Avenue water tank, they're underway with the repairs, which the previous paint job, there were some problems, so they're underway now. The 2012 road program, 12/13, essentially all the streets are complete with the exception of Argyle. Pipe work is about 98% complete, concrete work's about 50% complete. But to remind everyone, the streets that were done were Beach Block Douglas, Essex, Iroquois, Uniblock South of Huntington, Haverford, and then the Beach Block of Nassau. The beach bulkhead repairs are complete. There's a few punch list items, but they're essentially complete. Gladstone Avenue water tank painting, which was the interior, that's complete. The emergency work at the tank, we had the leak, that was completed. The Amherst Avenue emergency bulkhead repairs are complete. Frank's guys finished it up. They did the concrete work, put the fence back, so that's in good shape for the summer. The community development block grant, the beach access at Iroquois, is about 95% complete. And the Jerome Avenue tennis courts repairs are about 40% complete. They're out there as they were working as I pulled up also. So everything is moving along with our intention of trying to cap up all the construction prior to, if not Memorial Day, the first week of June. The other thing I wanted to report on, I received some information from the gentleman who was asking us about the dredging of the marina, the Blue Water Marina. And one of the questions was how heavy are the trucks, how many trucks, how many per day. They estimate a total of between 200 and 250 truckloads. The heaviest truckload would probably be around 75,000 pounds, which is a full-loaded trash truck. And they would most likely be looking at 4 trucks every 2 hours. Total of 16 to 20 trucks per day. You would probably be looking at 10 to 15 working days for that to happen. We did televise the sewer lines on a few streets that he had requested for the route. The lines appear to be in decent shape. Don't think there would be any major problem. Again, the trucks are approximately a full-loaded trash truck. And the only downside I see is we may have resident complaints if we had 20 trucks running in a day. But I told them I would at least bring that back for everyone to think about, and then we could decide how we want to proceed.
When do you need an answer on that, Ed?
He's probably, if I asked him tomorrow, but as soon as we can.
Does that mean today?
What's that?
After today, there's a 3-week break, so we won't have another meeting till our first meeting in June. Is that adequate, or do you need it today?
At this point, I don't think he's going to get it done for when he wants to, so it could wait.
Have we exhausted the other avenue, which we were hoping he'd consider, of using a barge? Is that out of the question?
No, it's not, and he's not saying he's definitely going this way, but this apparently is a more economical way, but I don't think he has anything concrete either way at this point. And we had some good discussions today about, at the Coastal Coalition meeting, essentially our next topic that we're focusing on is dredging. And there's a lot of changes that have happened within our government, within our state government. Dredging now is under the purview of the Department of Transportation as opposed to the Department of Environmental Protection. However, you still have to get a DEP permit. And we're going to pursue trying to make it easier to dispose of dredge spoils or the dredge byproduct. They don't like to say spoils.
Good job.
So by the time, I don't know how quickly that'll happen, but there was a lot of good discussion today on that.
Okay. Thank you, Ed. Anything else? Chief DeBasso.
Mayor, things are going very well at the fire department. We're keeping busy and really nothing else to report today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Lisa?
Good afternoon, everyone. I sent down a status report on our finances, which is self-explanatory. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to ask me. But just to touch on a few highlights as we stand year-to-date as of April 30th of this year. Our cash on hand in our general fund is $5,681,166. As of April 30th, the total receipts in the general fund were $18,717,015, and the total disbursements were $19,960,876. Year-to-date proceeds we received from FEMA were $871,274, which will be more than enough to satisfy this year's payment that's required on those emergency notes we had to take out. We originally took out emergency notes of $3,750,000. We made the first payment, and we're scheduled to make another $750,000 payment this year. Financially, we're in good shape. Our budget looks good. I'm going to continue to analyze that a little better. Currently, we have paid or charged about 39%, so we're right on line where we should be for this time of year. So if you have any additional questions, let me know. Also, you'll notice on the agenda for 5 o'clock, there is ordinance 2014-24, and it just needs a slight explanation. If you recall, back in March, we introduced an ordinance for the repair work to be done at City Hall, which were stemmed from damages from Hurricane Sandy. The reason that was introduced was because the local finance board was still accepting applications to waive the 5% down payment requirement for these type of ordinances for repair work due to storm damage. I went up to Trenton yesterday along with our bond counsel, Joel Fleischman, to appear before the board. In the past, it was just placed on the consent agenda and an appearance wasn't needed. I sent them a lot of documentation trying to avoid a trip up there, but they still required an appearance. We were successful in our application, which initially, the down payment that we were looking at saving was approximately $83,000. They did, however, ask us to come up with a down payment of $25,000 to help to offset the costs of the repair work that would be the city's responsibility, that would be uncovered by FEMA. So we still ultimately ended up achieving a savings of over $50,000, which was a good result. So because the ordinance that was introduced back in March indicated there would be no down payment required, we need to have a second reading of that ordinance today, which you will vote to table, and then reintroduce that ordinance for the same dollar amount, but just indicating that there is a $25,000 down payment requirement, which will be funded through our capital improvement fund and has been included in our capital budget. Do you have any questions?
Anybody?
Okay, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Chief?
As everybody can see, on Monday, the 12th, we put the lights on Atlantic Avenue back to normal operation, so I'm sure some people are happy about that. Some people are dissatisfied, but it is what it is. Beginning on Monday, May 19th, we're going to be taking part, the police department is going to be taking part in the National Click It or Ticket mobilization. So there will be a concerted effort out there by the police regarding seatbelt enforcement. And that's basically it. Everything else is good.
Thank you. I'd like to take an opportunity, welcome Mr. Deeney back. Nice to see you, Rich, and you've been missed.
Thank you. I have no special report today, other than I want to thank Chief Wolfson for what I know was a very comprehensive and wonderful job that he did during my absence, and I thank him publicly. I received a lot of compliments when I came back of how smoothly it went with Chief Wolfson, and I intend to work closely with him for the remainder of this year. Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Mr. Abbott?
Mayor, a couple items on our workshop. Let's start with 110. It says here Essex. It's actually Exeter Avenue. And you may have seen the emails I sent out. There's an individual beachfront owner that wants to put a new bulkhead in, and as a part of that new bulkhead would extend into the right-of-way. If you can picture Exeter Avenue, that's the Pier Street. Our bulkhead goes out towards the street and turns and then runs out towards the pier. So he wants to do, what is it, Eddie, about approximately 10 feet of municipal bulkhead, 10 to 12 feet at his cost. An application to the DEP requires authorization from the city of Margate. It would be a replacement of bulkhead in the existing line, and it would be under the supervision of our engineer. I would see no reason why we wouldn't want to take 10 to 12 feet of free bulkhead, and the bulkhead is old and in dilapidated condition. So I don't know that we need a resolution for that, but we certainly could. Like everything else, they would like to have it yesterday, the signature of a mayor. There is an application that has to be signed on behalf of the city. It would either be you or perhaps Mr. Deeney, but someone from Margate authorizing them to go forward and get a permit to replace their bulkhead, which would include 10 to 12 feet of city bulkhead.
I'm fine with that. Maury?
Good by me.
Brendan?
Right.
We're all fine.
Great. And then, Eddie, I don't know if you have that permit app or where that is, but we can get that knocked out tomorrow then.
Yeah, I only have a copy of it.
That's what I got too.
Reach out to them, and I'll be good for it.
That's it. Great. The second one is 7 South Frontenac Avenue. This was a planning board application that requires a license for landscaping area to the front of the building that will protrude into the right-of-way. Roger, you're probably familiar with it. I think he's tied up.
Yes, Scott.
This right-of-way, it's approximately 3 foot into the street right-of-way. There is also, I noticed from a survey, an existing roof encroachment. So my recommendation would be to have that license cover the roof encroachment, as well as a planting bed and flower boxes that the planning board has already approved, subject to governing body approval and authorization of a license. And I would assume that that shouldn't be a problem.
Scott, can I,
Yes.
I believe a year or two ago, the city gave a license agreement for that roof overhead.
We did.
Did they?
Yeah, the
Okay, so
mayor
they don't need
remembers
it.
that.
All
We
right.
did.
This was a case where the gentleman who owns the building, I think there's 7 units in it, and he lives in it also, wanted to build a very attractive rear patio, and it required some landscape variances. And the planning board thought to compensate for those variances, which they granted, it would be nice if he gave some landscaping on the front where the general public could see it and enjoy it. And he's willing to do that. And the sidewalk is, I think, 14 or 15 feet deep at that point, so there would be plenty of room for the public to walk by. So the board recommends it.
Everybody good with that?
Maury?
Good by me.
Brenda?
Yes.
You okay? Everybody's in agreement.
And just one more item, let me emphasize what Ed brought up to you today, and it's appropriate with Jim Rotella here as well. When we had our monthly Coastal Coalition meeting, one of the issues we went into is, as an organization representing both Cape May and Atlantic counties, and now we understand that Ocean and Monmouth County have done the same thing as we have done, and they've been in contact with our informal group. I'll call it informal, I guess. One of the things we'd like to do is try to, as a united front, push this idea of dredging. Now, what Ed mentioned to you is very significant. They've switched dredging from DEP to the DOT, and that will be, Stu Farrell was there, he said, that should be extremely helpful. We were urged at this point in time that we should start to move forward with some kind of an application with the state to push the issue if you would want to have your lagoons and other areas dredged out, which they desperately needed. So it's something that there's been a favorable development. The DEP land use still has authorization or to issue permits, but now they're starting to consider a dispersal. And Jimmy Rotella, if you would correct me or assist me where you think I need it, they may consider allowing the dispersal of, I'll call it dredge material, I'm not supposed to do that, it's not politically correct, but dredge material into portions of the bay. That would substantially reduce the cost of dredging instead of having to, well, truck it out like this one marina operator apparently wants to do. Just so you know, Avalon just spent over $4 million constructing a bridge to a dredge spoil site that has to be removed when they're done so they can dredge out their lagoons. I believe Ocean City is expending, what, $4 to $5 million, Jim, to try to get on a dredge program to dredge out all of their lagoons. All the lagoons in South Jersey need it. Their state hasn't allowed dredging. And when I say haven't allowed it, oh, they'll give you a permit, but the removal of the material is so expensive that it basically makes it impossible. So it's been a significant development. This is something so you're not caught flat-footed down the line, but we may want to start to push this again. Wouldn't you say, Ed?
Interesting also, I went on the DEP's coastal engineering website when I got back to the office, just to see about the status of our dredging that we have, that the state has funded, and it's still listed as an active project on their website. So that indicates to me that the money is still there for our lagoon dredging that they had allocated 10, 12 years ago.
Ed, does it say how much money? I've forgotten. I know it was...
It was 700,000, 800,000, something like that.
Allocated to Margate.
Yes,
So-
correct.
And then, of course, we have Mr. Rotella, who will probably assist us to get more grant money. Isn't that right, Mr. Rotella? You would like to try that?
Okay.
That's where it is. Just wanted to update you on it. It was a
Thank you,
significant
Scott.
development.
Who's that? Tom, do you have anything?
No, I don't.
Roger?
Ew. Jimmy Galantino said to report to you that he's extremely busy, that right now there are 41 spec houses under construction at this moment around Margate. Adding to that, I've been processing 6 more this week, so the construction boom is continuing and keeping a lot of people busy. And I want to thank Mr. Rotella for a respectful communication to the planning board from the very beginning. They helped fashion those 9 studies, and then they were involved at the end in approving them and juggling things around and making suggestions for refinements, and he took care of all their wishes. So thank you very much.
Maureen?
The ordinances that we were, working on the last few months, they actually take effect today, those new ordinances, so I thank everybody for getting that ready to go. We got approval from the assignment judge. Chief said that they're doing click it or ticket, make sure the patrol, they have their tickets, and we're ready to go.
Good. Thank you, Maureen. Brenda, do you have anything?
Just a couple things. I want to welcome back Rich, too, and I also want to thank the chief for filling in. And on that note, I just wanted to read a letter that I gave to Mike and Maury and Rich just now. Welcome back, Rich. I hope you enjoyed your trip across country, and we all appreciate the fabulous weather you brought with you. I wish to thank Rich for noticing a talent we had on our team who could fill in as acting business administrator while he was away. Admittedly, I was nervous about Rich leaving us for so long because of everything we had going on in the city at the time, and because I've become quite dependent on him myself. But my fears were soon dismissed as I began to work with Chief Wilson as acting business administrator. The chief is capable and more than competent in this role. He was a pleasure to work with, and I noticed an administrative strength in him as I had this opportunity to work with him more closely. The chief responded to any and all concerns I had as commissioner and did so in a detailed and timely manner. I think we all feel fortunate to have landed Rich as a business administrator. It's a win-win for the commission and for the residents. His experience of 40-plus years in the municipal management has really helped move Margate forward in a positive direction, and I'm very proud of everything he has helped us accomplish. Unfortunately, Rich plans on leaving us at the end of his contract in December, and I'd like to respectfully suggest to both Mike and Maury and Rich that the chief work with Rich and glean as much as he can from Rich before he leaves us at the end of this year. And then at that time, we can make the chief a permanent business administrator and police chief. Please consider this suggestion seriously. It would be helpful to have someone on our team who is already familiar with the city and its operations. This position can be filled without the expense of benefits because the chief is already receiving them, and we just pay him an additional weekly stipend to perform the role as business administrator. The chief also has a human resources personnel strength too, and he could take on the personnel role for the whole city, as a business administrator typically does under his or her role and the respective responsibilities in this position. The chief has proved helpful to me in the Public Works Department with suggestions for employee discipline when Frank and I needed guidance. I know it's not easy working closely with the commission. We don't often agree, and we have conflicting views, but to the chief's credit, he managed us well. It would be wise to have a plan in place so that at the end of this year, when, sadly for us, Rich leaves, the transition will be seamless except for simply missing Rich. I believe this plan is good for our team, good for the commission, and most importantly, good for our residents. Thank you in advance. And then I have a couple other things too. We have a lot of grant asks out, thanks to Jim Rotella and Ed Wahlberg. Whomever is the contact for the grants, we just need to make sure that we follow through with, read past the good news and follow through with any necessary requirements that they might need, so that nothing slips through our fingers, because there's a lot out there. And let's see. Also, I think there might be a peaceful democratic resolution to the dunes issue, something I've been thinking about. It's been on my mind, and this divisiveness has just been, I think it's just not good for the community. So, these are my thoughts. We've learned that the AG's office fully supports the state's executive order to proceed with the shore protection project. They are steadfast despite the letters and the meetings with the city of Margate. The direction some residents wish to head is toward the city spending taxpayer money to retain counsel and fight the state and the executive order to halt and seize this project. On the other side, we have residents who wish not to fight the project. Whether they're for or against the project, they don't want to spend money on legal fees to fight something they think we might lose in the end anyway. I think that's a pretty fair summation of where we are right now. My suggestion is this: what about another referendum as soon as Tom can legally organize it, asking our residents this: should Margate spend tax dollars to fight the state in an attempt to opt out of the shore protection project? And then whatever these legal expenses are estimated to be, there should be a realistic number. And then the next sentence could be, legal expenses are estimated to be $500,000 or whatever, and have that estimate there. And then I know as a commissioner, I would feel more comfortable if we had the vote of our people, and they supported us, I could move forward. And then before the referendum is held, I think it would be good to hold an organized town hall for our residents at the PAC to include the DEP, the Army Corps, and perhaps a resident of the AG's office to inform residents. Let's get everybody on the same page with information before the date of the referendum so they are as informed as possible. At least this way, the people will have a say in the anticipated pretty high expenditure. After all, it's their money. All right, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Maury?
No, Mike, I don't have anything at this time.
I am also good right now. We'll open for public comment on anything that was discussed here today. Sorry, Joy.
Wait, can I bring something up so Joy can?
Mr. Mayor, Steve Altman, 9003 Amherst Avenue, Margate. An inquiry, Mr. Wahlberg, if I may. That was dredging material that you were describing being trucked through Margate, am I correct or not? Okay. I have a suggestion that the truckers be required to use multiple egresses coming and going in the city rather than one or two particular routes as they travel in and out of Margate, so that we sort of spread out the vibration effects of heavily loaded trucks. I know, living on Amherst Avenue, when we have big trucks going up and down Amherst Avenue, it really shakes my home, and I would hope that something like that might be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Good afternoon, Dan Gottlieb, 407 North Nassau. I want to respond to Commissioner Taube's suggestion about another referendum in the city, and is the number $500,000 as maybe a starting point for what people should figure for legal defense of the city's 65% majority to not participate in the plan. My understanding is that the ordinance that we have on our books says that 2 out of 3 of the commissioners have to decide whether they want to join a dune project, and if 2 out of 3 commissioners decide they don't want to join a dune project, that they basically are telling the Army Corps, the DEP, whoever else, to go away. I don't know where we are with that. I don't know how you feel about it, Brenda. Mike, you've indicated how you feel. Mari, you've been very clear about how you feel. The city has given direction. We had a non-binding referendum that has given the commission direction to tell the state to go away, okay, that we don't want this project. All 3 of you have said in one way or another that you support the voters. If that's the case, the next logical step, and we have Mr. Abbott to help me with this one, possibly. The Attorney General has rendered an opinion, or the State Attorney General's office has rendered an opinion, that they don't recognize our ordinance or our referendum, and that they're going to come in and do this anyway. All I think the city wants for now, they don't want a $500,000 legal defense or $1 million legal defense, and I don't think there's ever been a referendum to decide if we're going to expend legal fees on any internal city issue before. So I'm not sure if that's pertinent to a situation where the only thing we're asking for, and the only thing as citizens that we're hoping to get at this juncture, is a legal opinion about whether or not the Attorney General is hanging his legal hat on a viable hook. And we don't know, because there is some language inside Executive Order 140 that leads people to believe that it does give them broad powers as it results to eminent domain.
Dan, 15 seconds.
Okay,
Thank
but
you.
that there is some ambiguity as it relates to whether or not they can construct a dune project, because there isn't an existing or imminent emergency. And I would just like either the solicitor or Brenda or Mike or somebody to comment on that comment that I just made. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
You want me to comment?
No, they're not talking about that. They're talking about Title 12. Am I correct? Is that what Go ahead.
All I can say, Dan, and just, so you understand, there was also an appellate court decision that upheld the authority of the DEP to condemn beach area for a shore protection program. It's the Borough of Neptune. In fact, it's only a 2-page decision because it was basically a slam dunk. So it isn't just the executive order, it's also an appellate court decision, it's statutory authority, and it's the state constitution and giving the state pretty broad powers for eminent domain. Now, I have a question for you, because obviously it's my opinion that you're looking to have someone else supplant. Is there any law firm or lawyer or anybody out there that has come up with any rationale to say that the opinion I've rendered in writing is incorrect or could be challenged successfully or could be changed? If there is, I would love to talk to him or her. I would take all the help I can get. I have heard for months that there are law firms engaged and lawyers looking at this. No one has ever called me or talked to me lawyer-wise, other than to say, and at least 10 of them have said, you are 100% right. The city of Margate cannot beat the state of New Jersey and the federal government on this issue. I would love to have the assistance, or at least see what they have that would maybe suggest we could win or prevail in that challenge. Do you have anything? Do you have any names or firms or anybody? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I've heard this for months, that these lawyers are out there. Who are they?
We've spoken to a number of different law firms, and we've had one lawyer we've spoken to a few law firms. We haven't sent anyone a retainer yet. We have the ability to do that. But we did engage one local attorney who wishes to remain anonymous, who felt that Executive Order 140 speaks to an existing or impending emergency, and that, in fact, there is not an existing or impending emergency, because if you look at the weather report today, there is no hurricane out at sea.
Dan, I sat in the room with the Deputy Attorney General, who asked for easements. I refused to give him easements. He never once mentioned that authority. He said the state has the ability to take the easements under Title 12. So there could be other authority besides the governor's emergency document. I would probably agree with you on that. I don't think that he has the power there, but I think the state does have the ultimate power.
State, and what we've heard also, and I'll just go another 30 seconds here, what we've heard is the same thing. But there is other language contained inside Executive Order 140. And I don't profess to be an attorney, but that other attorneys have commented on and have said, yes, it gives these state broad powers to condemn property. But our ordinance speaks to 2 out of 3 commissioners deciding to join the project. If they don't decide to join, we don't join. And that's what we're talking about here. Maybe they can condemn property, but can they start a project if there is not an existing or impending emergency?
It's my understanding they trumped the ordinance. They're saying that our ordinance doesn't, it's not...
That's right, Brenda, that's what we've heard. But has an attorney, an outside attorney, and Scott, I know Vaughn was in here a few weeks ago, and he spoke to some issues regarding potential conflict of interest that he thought you might have. Wait, let me finish.
In my opinion, Dan, that was just to muddy the water. In fact, I'm adversarial usually with the DEP, so it was intellectually dishonest, I would say, on Vaughn's part.
All right, why don't I suggest that you have whoever your attorney, your anonymous attorney, get in contact with Mr. Abbott, and maybe they can have a discussion and shed some light on this.
Would greatly appreciate it. Would love to talk to them.
Sharon,
Don't
you don't care for that?
Don't you think before we implement a binding referendum or a non-binding referendum that Brenda's suggesting, don't you think that we should expend a de minimis amount of money?
Brenda made a suggestion, and that's all it was, in my opinion, was a suggestion. Whether it was a good one or a bad one, I won't comment at this time. My goal here is to uphold the will of the people, and the way I heard it, and the way I heard the mayor, and the way I've heard Commissioner Taube, was that we held that last referendum, and we were going to listen to the people. And I believe we are bound as a commission now to uphold and support the will of the people, which said we do not want these dunes in Margate. And whether or not someone's going to come in here and bully their way and steamroll onto our beaches, independent of that, as a commission, we need to stand strong and say, you know what, the people said no. No means no, as far as I'm concerned. And I think that, I hope that Mike and Brenda, when they said no, that they were going to uphold and listen to that's why we went through the nightmare that we went through to have the initial referendum. If we weren't going to listen to the people and we were going to allow the state to come in here and bully their way, we shouldn't have wasted the time or the money or the effort or the dialogue for the referendum that we had. And to suggest that we should have another referendum, in my opinion, is ridiculous.
Maureen, we didn't tell the people we were
Please let me
spending
finish.
all this
Let me
money.
finish. What I intend to do and what I have been working on and what I will continue to work on, and now that Rich is back and he doesn't know it, I'm going to ask for his help, is to reach out to the cold list of attorneys that I have, that I've initially approached, try and get him to help me. It takes a lot of time. It's not easy to get a hold of these guys, to see if we can get an interest to do exactly what you're asking, get an opinion. That's all. It's not going to cost a lot of money to get another opinion. And, so I'm going to ask Rich if he'll help me, and I'm pretty sure he will.
Thank you, Marty. And I'll be back at 5 to ask some pointed questions about where people on this commission really stand as it relates to this issue, because I'm trying to get an understanding of that, and it's not crystallizing in my mind. I hear a lot of talk, but I don't see a lot of action. And I want to start seeing some action, and I want to see what you said, which is to support the voters. I want to see that happen. Thank you.
Sewell, 22 West Drive. I hate to beg to differ with our highly esteemed counselor and solicitor. However, the solicitor knows just as well as I know, perhaps even more so, that any statute, ordinance, order from up in Trenton must be uniform and consistent. It cannot be arbitrarily applied, Mayor. Put your pen down and listen. You can't multitask at your stage of the game. Let us say that you cannot cherry pick who you're going to bully into putting up dunes. You can't tell Ventnor you only need dunes for half of Ventnor. Or Wildwood, you don't need dunes at all. If they're going to have dunes, it has to be uniform and consistent. You know that as well as I do, solicitor. And if you're saying different, you know it's wrong. It cannot be arbitrary or capricious, which it indeed is. Secondly, it would be void for vagueness. This Mickey Mouse stuff that's coming down from Christie, try to grandstand for the Rhino run for the Republican Party, won't wash. His days of bullying down in South Jersey are over. Over. So, solicitor, tell them the truth. I'm sure you're capable of it. That they cannot force us to put up dunes when they're not forcing other people to put up dunes, including your old home front in Ventnor, the Quirkland. Okay? Did you get the message, solicitor? Was I clear enough? Do you have any questions before I leave the podium? I'll be glad to enlighten you. Any questions? I don't want you to quibble once I leave here.
Oh, I don't quibble, John.
All right.
Just nonsensical, some of your
It's perfectly sensible. You know that every law must be uniformly applied. And the state of New Jersey and the DEP is trying to arbitrarily make some people do it and other people not do it. That is unlawful, solicitor. You know it as well as I do, and that's not nonsense. That's black letter law. I had enough, Mayor.
Me too, John. Thank you. Anyone else?
Sharon Simon, 424 North Thurlow Avenue. First of all, I would like to thank again Mr. Abbott and our presenter here. A lot of the work that happened with the flood elevations and everything, and your experience, knowledge with the DP or whomever else has been very, very, very helpful, and Margate being where it is, and I'm glad you keep on top of it and push for as much money as we can. So I like to give credit where credit's due and comment when it's not. So moving right along, I feel like this is a dance, and the dance cards keep switching.
Next meeting.
Okay? First of all, and this is not in any particular order, I remember Solicitor Abbott specifically saying way back that if it got to the point where we had to see if the city was going to fight the state or the DEP or question the legality, someone else would be hired to do that because of his
First of all, not in-depth knowledge is one of the things you said, and you said, maybe you didn't use the word conflicts, but you used the word involvement, as I agree. You've come out already saying you don't think we should fight the state because you think they'll win, and this has been in the paper, and it will cost us too much money. So to have you involved with a potential attorney who's going to be fighting the other side is a little, in my opinion. However, the three of you already agreed, under pressure from the public, to go out and to hire an attorney or engage an attorney to see if this is something we wanted to do. And all of a sudden, because Commissioner Blumberg is doing this, you don't want to do it, you don't want to do it. As soon as there's money, you're like, oh, money, money. Well, the fact of the matter is, and Commissioner Tauber, you should know this, you can't have a referendum on spending legal fees. Because if we could, you wouldn't have all the legal fees for the Tom Hiltner whistleblower. You wouldn't have the situation you have now with Marketplace Realty, which I hope is coming to an end tonight, and so on and so forth. So you can't have that referendum. And the fact that you suggest it shows your lack of knowledge of what you can have for a referendum or not. But the issue is simply this, okay? Not whether the dunes, we want them or not. The issue, the legal issue is, can the state come in and do this even though we had an election and we have an ordinance that says that they can't do it unless you sign on? And it's not up to Solicitor Abbott, although he may have his opinion, or this lawyer's opinion. It's a judge.
15
goes
seconds,
to court, and we find out, can they say, because it's a state of emergency, they do this. There's no question they can take property through eminent domain. None whatsoever. That's not the legal issue here. Thank you.
Anyone else? Motion to close, sorry.
Not so fast, Mayor. Steve Warner, 103 North Sumner Avenue. First of all, I think the idea of having Chief Wolfson as the business administrator is an excellent idea. Okay? After Rich retires, of course. Yeah. And number two, as regarding the dunes, I don't know, you guys, you're really a handful, I gotta tell you. I don't know how much legal experience you have. First of all, the first court, you're gonna lose. The second court, you're gonna lose. The district court, you're gonna lose. The appeals, you're gonna lose. So you're gonna go to the Supreme Court in New Jersey, and I got a really strong feeling you're gonna lose that too. All right? And then it's gonna go, if you want it to go, to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they won't look at it. Okay? They won't even look at the case. And so you lost. And if the city's going to pay that kind of money, I think the voters, have a right to. It's one thing to say you don't want the dunes. It's another thing to say you want to spend $1 million to take this case to the U.S. Supreme Court. The voters want to spend $1 million of tax money, and then have the court just say we're not even going to look at it. Is that what you want? So I think it should be put to the voters. If that's what the voters want, you know what? I believe in democracy. If the people in this city want to spend $1 million to fight something you're going to lose, I'm with you.
Gray Laquier, 3 Dolphin Drive. I had no intention of speaking tonight, but only because I can't let that be the last word. In law school, they never showed us the magic 8 ball that we could turn to present to the judge and say, you win, you lose, don't bother arguing because this is how it's always going to be. We don't have that. That's not how it works. If there was a coin toss, whatever. Somebody argues for it, somebody argues against it, the judge decides. It's not you're going to lose, you're going to lose, you're going to lose, you're going to appeal, and you're going to lose that. No one knows what the Supreme Court is going to do. No one knows what any level of court or any judge on any given day is going to do. We've never had gay marriage 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. Now we do. State by state, they're turning it over. Don't just assume what a judge or a court is going to say, and don't be idiotic enough to stand up here and think you can say this will happen, this won't happen, because you have no fucking idea what's going to happen or what won't happen. Thank you.
Anyone else? Is there a motion to close public comment?
I'll make a motion that we close public comment.
I'll second that.
Mr. Becker? Yes. Mr. Blumberg?
Yes.
Mr. Dalby?
Yes.
Okay. We need to pass Resolution 10314, authorizing an executive session.
I'll make a motion.
Mike, are we going to do that now, or are we going to do that after the
We're gonna do that.
regular meeting?
Do that now.
We're going to do that now, so everybody's going to leave while we have the executive
Or we
session.
can move down to the
You want to do it to the end of the 5
That's
o'clock?
correct.
Don't we normally do it?
Yeah, we
I'll
usually
second
do it
that
after the regular meeting.
You want to do it now?
Huh?
You want to do it now?
What?
The executive session?
Yeah, Mr. Parker.
Mr. President, the executive session,
You
Mayor.
want to call the roll, Tom?
This was your second, all right, Mr. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Blumberg?
Yes?
Ms. Dalby?
Yes.
We will, would the commission like to move down to the conference room so that people can stay here?
Mayor?
Yes.
Joy wanted to tell the commission something. Does she have to stay till the 5 o'clock, or can we give her special?
We won't be real long.
Okay, we won't be long, Joy, sorry.
I hope. Okay. What are we going to do? What do you want to do? You want to clear the room?
It's up to you guys, whatever you want to do.
I say we move to the...
You want to go to the conference room?
I think so. Ms. Parker, we're going to go to the conference room. I'm going to go to the bathroom.